Adoption and foster care ministry is evangelistic in at least 3 ways: sharing Jesus with kids, biological parents, and bringing signs of the kingdom.
This is Breaking Barriers, where we help pastors and churches grow so that they can go.
Hey guys, welcome to Breaking Barriers. My name is Pastor Andrew, and I'm here today with a good friend and fellow pastor at Mercy Hill, Pastor Landon. And Landon is over our sending lane, which currently also is our local ministry, kind of local missions lane. And for us, that has a lot to do with adoption, foster care. We're going to get into some of those things today. But the reason that we want to talk about this is because we believe that every ministry in the church needs to be connected to the mission of the church, all right? So make disciples and multiply churches. That is our church's mission statement. And what we don't want to have is a siloed community ministry that simply exists outside of that mission. You know, it's like, man, I think a lot of churches, it can end up being this idea of like, hey, we have our evangelistic type mission endeavor, but then we also do some good in the community. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in other words, we don't really do community ministry outside of the main mission of the church. So I think sometimes you could see churches that have, they have a mission they're on. They want to reach people locally, but then they also have other things that they call community ministry that are just do good things in the community. Landon, from your seat, how have you seen that play out? And, how are we trying to be different where it's like, man, the community ministry is an arm of the evangelistic side of our mission?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, everything should drive towards Matthew 28, the Great Commission that Jesus has given all believers. And with the chosen ministry, you want me to
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, this is what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. So our chosen ministry, we've got adoptive, foster, and families count are really the 3 main buckets. And we'll talk throughout this podcast about how, we've really entered into those spaces, and really the Lord's just done some incredible things through that. But we had a goal 2025 to see 200 adoptive and foster families come through Mercy Hill, and praise God, we blew that goal out of the water this fall. So going back to like the evangelistic endeavors through this, I mean, there's just so many opportunities. Yeah. One thing I love to talk about right now is just thinking about the 400 plus kids that have really come through Mercy Hill. A lot of those through the foster care system, a lot of those adopted into families here at Mercy Hill. But I want to talk too about the narrow focus we have here.
Right.
We can't get spread too thin. My dad used to always tell me, like, you get spread too thin, you do a halfway job at everything.
Yeah.
And we really have laser focused in on these 3 buckets.
Yeah. We'll get into some of the context of that. But I do think, going back to that question, like, it's easy for us, I think, at times to view community ministry as just sort of the feel-good, do-good arm of what the church does. Let me ask you a question. You spent time on the field. Certainly you're over our sending lane now, submissions and all that. Have you personally experienced, because I know this is a narrative in the mission field where people end up going and they sort of lose the gospel witness or trade that in for just the good works, almost like we're going back to an old school theological liberalism of, man, we're just here to sort of do good things in the community. And to me, that can be really dangerous. And I think our community ministry efforts, if we're not careful, can fall into that trap pretty easily.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really good. I mean, you see it on the field a lot, especially in really hard contexts where you got to have a platform to get an entry visa into a country. And you get there and all of a sudden the missionary's spending 60 hours a week on the platform and nothing in the ministry. That's why they're there. They're there to share the gospel. They're there to make disciples and plant churches, and they totally lose that vision.
Yep. So
that's why it's really important. And community ministry, there is very much a pitfall to say, like, hey, we're going to do all of these things, but really lose sight of
right
what we're supposed to do here on earth and share our faith and see people come to Jesus, children.
That's right.
In this case, come to Jesus, but even we'll talk about bio moms and
that's
bio
right. There's a huge mission field in this stuff.
That's right.
But I acknowledge, I was actually having a conversation with Rich Birch from the Unseminary podcast about this. I am sympathetic to the fundamentalist leaning people who raise a little bit of an eyebrow when you start talking about community ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think they're right. And I think that there's a way to think about this. We're going to get into it. That is the right way. But I do think that they have seen people, lose focus of the mission for a feel-good thing in the community that is much easier because it lacks the offense and the stumbling block of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who doesn't love you digging a well?
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And so I understand why people can be hesitant. I remember when we started this, we did the No More Spectators initiative. You guys might have already been on the field.
We were.
I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so funny, man. I did this whole thing about like, man, we're going to affect change in the community, and we're going to have, adoption, foster care. It was larger than that. And when people left that day, there was this guy that was walking down the sideline going, well, I didn't know Mercy Hill was a liberal church. And it was like, he had it so fixed in his mind that if you started going down that road at all, you would lose the gospel. And again, I'm sympathetic because it's like, man, that is sort of the roots of theological liberalism. Sure. But dude, that doesn't have to be true.
That's right.
I think a lot of guys that hear this podcast might be a little bit like, hey, we don't do a ton in the community because I'm a little scared of that. We don't want to do the whole sponsor a school. We don't do Compassion International. We're not doing adoption, foster care focus, homeless focus, whatever, because, quote, that's not the gospel. Mm-hmm. And I understand it, but I also think we're going to lay out some ways today where it doesn't, you can walk and chew gum, man. This stuff can be a way that you end up in conversations for the gospel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see it all throughout the book of Acts, maybe in a different vein, but it's like, well, Peter heals the beggar.
Right, that's right.
But it doesn't stop there. It's always like, silver and gold I don't have, but what I do have is salvation in Christ. Here, I'm going to share the gospel. So it's like the famine relief, things like that. Mm-hmm. It's like there's the signs of the kingdom, but it's also, we're missing it if, as we bring signs to the kingdom, we don't share the gospel with that.
Yeah, it's like, man, if there's signs of a kingdom and you don't ever talk about the kingdom,
that's right.
It's just, feel
it's
good,
huge,
whatever.
Huge miss, yeah.
Well, today we're going to set up 3 specific ways that adoption and foster care ministry specifically are evangelistic. Now, with that said, we are not saying every church needs to go down this road. This is a tough road. It feels good to say it out loud. And you talk about fatherlessness. You start talking about fatherlessness. You start talking about, getting involved with foster care and single moms and all that. It feels so right, but it's very hard. Mm-hmm. And so we understand not everybody's going to be called to this, but we do think this is a good model for people to think about how is your church going to connect in the community, and are there ways that can be a pathway towards evangelism and making disciples? I remember being really radically affected by, again, Rich Birch. He has a book on church growth, and he just talked about how one of the lanes of church growth is community ministry, and how the community perceives your church's good works in the community and how it raises questions. And I remember thinking, man, we're doing all the stuff, but we don't communicate it that way. We don't really think about how this could be a sign of the kingdom as much as maybe we should. Not at all, but we as much as we should. And so I want to set that up. We're going to get into the 3 areas specifically with adoption and foster care and families count. But before we do that, I was going to set up just some context for how we landed on sort of the chosen idea. So again, you guys were gone, Landon, but we walked through a season in our church where we moved people greatly towards the ministry outside the walls, and we called it No More Spectators, and it was a great idea. The only problem was it just didn't work very well. It was really great, and it really was cool, man. We set up this whole system where nonprofits could come in and post volunteer needs, and then our people had a login where they could go in and be matched up based on their gifting, and it was this big, really cool idea. It was just too complicated, and it was really hard to kind of hold the nonprofit side accountable to let us know when our people were serving, so we couldn't track things. We didn't know if it was working. Anyway, all that stuff came out, and your boss, Jonathan, he came to me somewhere in 2020 or something like that. I can't remember now, 2019, 2020. And I knew he approached it gently because he knows me, and he was like, man, I know you're really invested in this thing. No more spectators. And he was right. I have a real sunken cost bias. Okay, so if I'm all in, it's hard for me to change courses. And basically, he said, "Man, we need to scrap all that and just go with Chosen." He's like, "Our people have responded to Chosen. Man, it's in our individual giftings as a church, you know." And so he said, "Man, I think we need to go with Chosen." Now, you've been sitting over Chosen for the last couple of years. Why do you think, or how do you think our church is uniquely wired, or, you know, every individual has gifts. That means the church has individual gifts, right? And like, not every church can be wired the same because you're made up of people who have an individual gift matrix. What do you think draws us towards this particular ministry?
Yeah, it's interesting. I get asked this question a lot. I think first and foremost, I mean, you'll talk about you and Anna adopting Faith Ann. I mean, it was always in y'all's DNA, bloodstream. But I think adopting Faith Ann, she's 9 now.
Almost 9, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that really kind of kicked things off. And having you, obviously, as lead visionary, I think it's just huge. So I think that, and I just think our people, there's just a compassion element that our people just bring to the table, and the Lord has just used that just in incredible ways. And you know, compassion isn't enough. It's a grittiness too, you know, to dig in these areas in adoption, foster care, and families count that, I mean, they're hard. I mean, all 3 lanes are extremely, extremely hard. But seeing the grittiness and the compassion and people willing to take, you know, just huge steps to just see, kingdom purposes go forward. It's just pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us to note, like for us, well, actually, I would say for any church, if I was advising them, I would say, hey, man, don't start just with the need in the community. I mean, Jesus said it, the poor will always be with you.
That's right.
Like you and I both know there will never be a day this side of the kingdom when adoption is not a need. You know, and maybe even foster parents, not a need, as sad as it is. You know, we acknowledge that we live in a broken world. My point is there's always going to be need. It's almost better for us to start with the why. You know, Romans 12 says, having gifts that differ, use them. And I don't think that's just for the believer, because a church is nothing more than a local collection of believers.
That's right.
And so, like, trying to find and nail down the heartbeat. You know, I would imagine, and you said it, you know, from a lead pastor standpoint, but like, let's say a lead pastor is in, you know, maybe a more rural part of North Carolina or something, and he was a veteran, he had 20 years in the service or something like that. Like that his church might follow his lead into dealing with like veteran affairs and things with homelessness and mental illness and things like that. My point is that, you know, every church is going to have kind of a way that it can go. And I think it's trying to find your unique sort of contribution in these ways. Okay.
And you can't hang your hat on everything.
That's right.
You got to have a couple areas we're going to hang our hats on, and we're gonna go really hard for the glory of God and how He's gifted and wired the church in those ways.
Yeah, and you end up saying no to a lot of stuff.
That's right.
I mean, we've had a lot of people that had a lot of good ideas.
Yep.
And a lot of times we'll talk about own catalyzed bless. If somebody's really hyped on something, it's like, hey man, we want to bless that, or we'll catalyze it. And how can we help you go do it? That's not our thing. What we're going to do is when we talk about going, we say, you know, gather groups, give, go. We're talking about international missions, domestic church planning, and Chosen. And that's really it.
That's it.
That's it, right? All right, so I've got 3 ways that Chosen ministry specifically can be evangelistic. Again, this is all connecting back. We want it connected to the mission of the church. It's not a bolt-on on the outside to do a feel-good thing. It's connected to the mission. And you've seen these up close, so I'm going to almost pose them to you because of where you're at. But the first thing is 3 ways that the Chosen ministry is evangelistic. The first one is, it's obvious, children who are displaced end up in Christian homes. Whether that's forever or whether that's for probably a significant season. I mean, a very high percentage of kids that go into the foster care system don't go back out of that system in the same year, or if ever. That's sad. We don't want that. We want to rebuild families. You know, foster care is about rebuilding and restoring. But, you know, talk about that. Like, we have a lot of kids that come in and out of Mercy Hill even because they're in foster homes,
Yeah.
or they get adopted in from a place of brokenness or a country that they wouldn't have heard the gospel.
Yeah, I mean, even thinking about, these last 5 years, and we've had over 400 kids come in through adoption or through foster care. And just thinking about, I mean, I'll use another missions term, if you will, like gospel availability or access.
Yep.
All of a sudden they're in a very, very rough, trauma-induced situation. They get placed in the foster care system. I don't know what caused that. Really some brokenness caused that situation. But now they get to step into a Christian home where they do have access. I mean, just thinking about, knowing our foster parents at Mercy Hill and our adoptive parents, they're going to church. They're hearing, Mercy Hill kids, all of a sudden it's pouring into them. At home, they're getting discipled and they're hearing the gospel constantly. So they just have constant access to the gospel simply because of adoption and foster care. So there's just constant evangelism of them, just in the things of the Lord and the Word, that they have immediate access to and coming into these homes.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we send missionaries all over the world, and when we do, we're primarily trying to see the evangelization of adults. And in our nation, there's a lot of people turning to the faith right now, a lot of college kids and all that, and that's true. That's awesome. But let's be honest. The greatest transfer of faith from one generation to another happens between parent and child.
That's right.
It happens in the home.
That's right.
People come to the Lord's table through their own kitchen table. And so it's like we know that is the most, when we're putting kids in Christian homes, we understand that they have an incredible opportunity to hear the gospel as they grow. Secondly, and this is one that I think you and I both get really excited about, not more excited than the kids, but we get excited about this too. Adoptive and foster parents have an opportunity to share the gospel with biological parents.
Yep.
And we've seen this in multiple stories. I don't know if you want to tell a couple of those stories, and then I want to get you to do a kind of a flyby of Families Count.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll just share two quick stories.
Yeah.
One, we had this family. The goal of fostering is reunification, and they saw, mom's out of the picture, mom's deceased, but dad just kind of come around, sharing the gospel with dad. Even situations like dad sitting at the kitchen table with them, son's in bed, and just like weeping after hearing the gospel. Really for the first time and seeing somebody love on him and care for him. Reunification happens. They're still so connected. Dad's been coming to church some. The gospel saves.
Wow.
The gospel is what this dad needed to hear. And we just pray that, he's not a believer at this point, but we pray that he would be saved. And we talking about the family. Yeah, dad gets saved. I read this the other day. Dad gets saved in the family. 83% more likely for mom and kids to now come to faith as well.
Yeah.
So just seeing that situation, the family unit. But really, it was through this fostering situation that this happened. I remember another fostering situation, at the High Point campus, walking in and seeing, this young lady was not back even into this home, but the bio moms in the room hearing the gospel every single Sunday.
Yeah.
So just thinking about that relationship, and this could just expand. I could tell you 5 or 6 stories.
Well, even me personally, because it's not. I think we naturally think about fostering when you're talking about bio parents, but it's not just that. Anna has been able to foster some limited communication with Faith and our daughter's biological mother, and we praise God for that. We want to we want to keep as much relationship as we can. We would pray that God continues to do things in her life and those kind of things. So now Families Count also, and I know that we're talking about, we're talking about adoption and foster care here, but the Families Count idea is a class that is offered by Mercy Hill to specifically help restore parents who have either lost their children or are in grave danger of losing their children.
That's right.
And they get paired up with an advocate, right? Talk to me about that. You talk about gospel transfer.
That's right.
That's so good.
Yeah. So just our past session just finished up a Families Count. We had 10. Every single one is paired up with an advocate from Mercy Hill. So a leader at Mercy Hill is investing in them, eating a meal with them every single Monday night, at Families Count. I can explain more here in a minute about that. But yeah, eating a meal, and then outside of that, just seeing life change, just asking them for coffee, asking them what they learned in the class that night, and really just, sharing the gospel with them over and over and over again through conversation.
And we want, I think that we walk a line with this, because it's a county thing.
Sure.
Like, I respect the county a ton. They understand that we have a gospel motivation.
That's right.
At the same time, if someone walks in, they're like, man, the gospel is not, the gospel is not what I'm doing. I'm not here for that. I don't want that shoved down my throat. They're coming to our thing. They got to be respectful of it. But at the same time, like, we're going to do every single thing for them anyway. Like, they're going to get an advocate if they need a ride to Families Count. We're going to make their meal, drop their kids off. We're going to do everything we can for them and show them the love of Christ, and even hope in God's common grace that maybe they learn something from the class, even if they don't become a believer.
That's right. And just with Families Count as a whole, I think we learn pretty quickly. You talk about from the stage, like, hey, we want to empty the foster system. Mm-hmm. Well, the foster system is just so cyclical.
Yep.
So we gotta start shaping, and the gospel is what does that through evangelistic endeavors. But like, we got to start shaping these bio parents,
right?
Who come to us through Families Count, get this advocate. But then, just this past session, we've seen, just two situations. This one situation where marriage has been off the table. They got 5 kids, just, living together. She's getting married. She was like, I'm done with this. This is what the Lord has called me to do. I know that. And they're getting married, which is just incredible to see, like, those little steps of obedience, but how the Lord, affects that. And it's just great.
Yeah. Ways. And in our worldview, we're going to look at that and we're going to say, even if you don't believe in Jesus, guys, we know this just sociologically. One of the greatest predictors of poverty is if you're single.
Yeah.
It just is. It's like, man, if you're kind of single mom, one of the greatest predictors of poverty, so even in God's kindness, it's like just his plan for family and prosperity.
Yeah.
We're trying to teach people some of those things. Obviously, it's got a gospel motivation first, and we're very explicit about that.
Yep.
It is evangelistic. All right. The third thing I would say is third evangelistic sort of bent towards our community ministry. Because remember, we don't want it to be fuzzy. We don't want it to be just feel good. Is the chosen ministry brings signs of the kingdom to a watching world. Now, I can talk about this a little bit. And I'm going to talk about this book that I have coming out here in just a few minutes, but I talk about it in the book. But man, adoption specifically, I think foster care is this way too, but adoption specifically create an open door to be able to share the gospel.
Yeah. Because
an unbeliever looks in at that and they simultaneously think two things. Number one, they love it. All right, it's almost like you can't be a human unless you are just so Romans 1 depraved. Mm-hmm. Okay, just seared.
Yep.
To not like have your heart kind of long for the orphan to come home. We watch the when kids watch the movie Cinderella. People think, oh, I'm gonna tell you why Cinderella's got such a draw. It's because when a kid's 7 or 8 years old and they see one of the siblings because they're not part of the biological family getting treated like that, it breaks their heart.
Yeah.
And so it's like we know that is wrong. And so there's something in us, even for the unbeliever, that longs for the orphan to come home and to have a home. At the same time, they think, how could anybody ever do that? It's so hard. And so then they got this kind of head-scratching look. Me and Anna joke about it. It's the look, okay? It's like, it's the look on someone's face when they don't know how to say, why did you do that? Because that sounds rude, but that's really what they want to know.
Yeah.
And it can be kind of a sign of the gospel, We also see this with our social workers. We've seen a lot of ministry done to social workers as we bring the church. Hey, a lot of people from the church are fostering and adopting. All of a sudden, people are seeing that as a sign of a kingdom that's coming where the family is whole and kids aren't orphans.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, a rising tide raises all ships, and that's what we want to do in the community. We do that with the gospel being very much at the forefront of why we do things, But yeah, just with, I could tell you 3 or 4 stories about just social workers in the last couple of weeks. I put a card on your desk today, or on Jenna's desk to put on your desk. You were in a meeting in there, but it's just they're just thanking us for like, hey, we're doing their Christmas party. We're doing all these things for them. We're doing them for the kingdom and we're doing them because we love them and we see them and we want to say like, hey, you're seen, you're known, and we know what you do is really hard as well. But I've had a constant barrage recently of people coming to me and being like, social workers, being like, y'all are just incredible. And it's like, we're not incredible. Like, we do all this, you know, for the glory of God going forward.
Right.
But I think just how, we navigate some of those opportunities, and it's just favor, man. I mean, I look back and I'm like, it's just favor from the Lord, but we can capitalize on that favor and push that forward. Or, we can be hesitant towards that, but we want to ride the momentum as long as we can, in the community.
So I think that what it comes down to right now, and again, we're talking about foster and adoption. It may not be that. It may be something else that you do,
right.
Man. It could be getting involved in wildlife. The Young Life version of like teen parents.
Mm-hmm.
It could be prison ministry. It could be homelessness. It could be. But my question: this podcast is about churches that are trying to grow so they can go, right?
Yep.
And so my question for everybody to wrestle with is like, in what ways is your church engaging in community ministry type efforts that aren't simply sort of a feel good idea, but they are actually very mission oriented, and there is an element to it where you're trying to see people come in. Mm-hmm. And I think people can fall into the trap, Landon, of like, well, of course, Mercy Hill has this big chosen ministry because they're a big church. And like, and we talk about this on the podcast all the time. It's not a if, then, it's a because I did, now we have, right?
That's right.
So we don't say, well, if we get bigger or when we get bigger, we'll do that. Instead, it's like, because we did it, we got to see some of the fruit from it. So I would really push people to think about what they're doing in terms of community ministry. Yeah,
and I think, we kind of alluded to it earlier, but like, you got to know your people. I think every church has unique giftings, and we want to hang our hats and run after some of those things for God's glory, as long as he has us running in them. So you spoke on it earlier, like we want to, domestic church planting, international church planting, chosen ministry. Like we've hung our hats there and we're going to run hard after those things. But, as if you're a lead pastor, it's like, hey, like, what are those things? How has the Lord formed the body right now that I'm pastoring, I'm shepherding? And how can we run after some of those things by taking little steps? It's one step like leads you here. It was one step for Mercy Hill. Way back when, and now we're here, and we still want to keep taking steps. We still want to keep growing this thing.
Yeah. So I'll close like this. I wrote a book called Chosen: Building Your Family the Way God Builds His.
Yep.
It is the story of our adoption of Faith Ann, who is a 9-year-old special needs child who is a light of our life, but it's a different kind of hard. And the book really talks about that. I think in the last 20 years, there's been a reawakening of Christian adoption, which then brought on a lot of parents who were like, well, hey, we didn't realize it was going to be this hard. I don't think that's a reason to take your ball and go home. I think it means that we need to prepare people for the fight in better ways. Mm-hmm. And part of preparing for the fight is realizing how hard it's going to be. So we wrote this book. It's a story of Faith Ann. But it's not just her story. It's our church. This kind of ministry that we have. And then obviously most of the book is gospel motivation for adoption. Mm-hmm. I think that you can adopt out of fear and guilt, or you can adopt out of an identity that you have because you're already in the family and because of, because you were chosen, man. Chosen people choose people. Adopted people adopt people. And I think, I tell a story in the book. I've got a good friend who has a special needs son, and their family, I say good friend. We're kind of friends with their family. We really respect them. They're awesome in our community. But they have a son that they adopted from Ecuador, and their son was at a day old. He had just been born. A local guy was building a house. Carpenter was building a house. Hears him crying in a trash heap. Just heartbreaking, man, just because of all of his deformities and everything, and he wasn't valued in that culture. And so they brought him to an orphanage, and this family ends up adopting him, and his line is the dad's line is, "My story and my son's story are exactly the same. I too was pulled from a trash heap by a carpenter."
That's good.
And it's like, hey, you can get really motivated by cute pictures and sad stories, but it will fade, man. I promise you, it's too hard. Adoption's too hard for that. But when you realize what God did for you, and then you look upon somebody else and you see them manifesting in a physical condition, what was your spiritual condition, man, you will, have a heart for them. And so the book is really those three things: our story, our church's story, gospel-centered motivation. It's a real call to action and courage. Our prayer for the book is that it's going to be used to galvanize tens of thousands of Christian adoptions across our nation. And that's only going to happen if hundreds of churches sort of really get off the sideline onto the front line. Yep. And the last thing I'll say is, man, this book really it really lays well if you wanted to start a group Bible study with it, or a just like a little community group or something like that. If you have adoption-minded people. Landon, your wife has been really involved in the book in terms of helping me edit and all that kind of stuff. I mean, along with our publisher, New Growth Press. But you got any closing thoughts on the way this book might be able to be used?
Yeah, I mean, Jenna has obviously read it. She was probably the first one to read it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, even how, as she's read it, I think what you just said is so good. Like the motivation has to be the gospel, and for anything, adoption or anything, but specifically, really hard steps like adoption or fostering. It's hey, like if the gospel is not the root, if it's not the motivation of why we're doing these things, they will fail and flop.
Yep.
But yeah, having that paramount, in our lives, and seeing how we've been adopted, and therefore, we are called to do that. I think about Nero. This quote always stands, but Nero quoted, and he's like, these Christians are coming in and they're even adopting our orphans,
right?
And it's like, man, that's the Christian heart, but it's not that they've, it's because they've been adopted by Christ, and now that same heart is displayed to the orphan. Right. So, she's loved the book. It's been awesome. Yeah. It's been challenging. Yeah. But she, I can't wait to read it. It's going to be
good, man. Well, hey, January 2026, you can pick it up anywhere in terms of Amazon, or go to andrewphopper.com/chosen. You can find it there as well. Hey, guys, this podcast is for churches who are trying to grow so they can go. Churches can grow without going, but they cannot go without growing. If you like this type of content, be sure to follow on whatever platform you are listening to this now. And it helps more pastors like you get the word out about some practical teaching around how they can sort of get their churches growing and going. Thanks a lot.